Welcome to the Crit House and our new series, 3. Today we're joined by Paul Caponigro, a fine art and landscape photographer who grew up immersed in art as the son of a photographer and a painter and designer. Paul himself trained first as a painter and later turned to photography, becoming a pioneer in digital imaging. His work transforms clouds, waves, and skies into dreamlike visions, layered, abstract, and deeply expressive. Known for his icy blues and fiery oranges and misty grays, his images fuse nature with imagination, probing the link between landscape and consciousness. Paul Caponigro pushes photography beyond the conventional frame, creating an otherworldly aesthetic that is uniquely his own. Welcome to the Crit House. 3. Paul Caponigro, thank you for joining us on the Crit House. You've been with us before. The idea for this series came from you, and I want to thank you for that because I think it's brilliant. You sent me an email, kind of conceptualizing photographers talking about their own photographs, and I don't know why I didn't think of that before, but I immediately my head exploded, and I called you and said, let's make that happen. And here we are. We're talking about the 3 images of your artwork and the artwork of other folks. So thanks for the image, for the idea, and thanks for the images, and welcome back to the Crit House.
Thanks so much for running with it. I can't wait to hear what other people say about their images. It's always fascinating to talk with pictures.
It really is. I really like the series, the My 5 series we did, where people talk about their influences, but there's something about people's engagement with their own and the images that it'll be interesting to see what they choose of their own. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your photography so that people who aren't familiar with you know who you are as a photographer and as an artist.
I grew up in an artistic family. My father is a well-known fine art photographer, black and white. Youngest of the East Coast Minor White School and West Coast Ansel School. My mother is a painter turned graphic designer and oversaw the production of many great photographic books. Not only my dad's, many of Elliot Porter's. She worked with O'Keeffe on the Stieglitz portrait. So I've had a really interesting life in listening to different artists talk about their work. I found it really fascinating. And one of the things I find particularly fascinating about photography is that even with the same tools, even with the same subject, we can all come away with different photographs. And so I think the big theme that I'm going to emphasize today is not only do we see the world in new ways, but we also see ourselves seeing. And what could be more important?
Well, I see that in the images that you sent and that we're going to be talking about. There's something very poetic about your work, which is interesting because I know that you are also a poet or an aspiring poet. How does that interaction happen in your photography, or is that just coincidental?
It's not coincidental. I'm really interested in and have been heavily influenced by sacred art and serial imagery. In the Renaissance and so many other cultures, images were used to tell stories, often sacred stories. Many of the great epics that I studied as a lit major, I was both an art major and a lit major, were those sacred stories, and those sacred stories are often delivered in poetry. But I've been laughing at myself for the last 5 years, having taken a deep dive into poetry and now being published on 5 continents in almost 100 journals right now. Gonna hit that goal.
Wow.
Next year. There's something really special about poetry's condensation and being able to speak to emotion and to speak in ways that aren't always rational. I love that a poem is an experience. Unlike an essay, it doesn't have to make an argument for something. Yeah. It just presents an experience. And sometimes those experiences can be extremely personal, and you have so little space, you really have to cut to the chase. You have to get down to the essence of things. I'm not one that subscribes to the picture should be seen and not heard category. I do believe that there are times to get really quiet, both when you're making the image and when you're appreciating the experience of looking. But then there's all the stuff that happens afterwards, like you and I are talking pictures today, and I'm looking so forward to listening to how other people are talking pictures. Yeah. That's part of the art experience. I often go back to that Ansel quote, "The negative is the score and the print is the performance."
I love that. Yeah.
Right? And that doesn't just happen when Ansel reperforms a negative. That also happens when we look at the print that he makes and we interpret it and we talk about it. We continue the life force of that into our lives and carry it on in other ways.
Well, let's all take a look at the poetry and the artwork of John Paul Caponigro and number one, which is Reflection. Tell us about not only this image, but I guess it's a series for you as well.
It really is. I can't look at this image without coming back to one of my favorite quotes. There's some quotes I live by. And this one, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And the funny thing is I've not been able to find an attribution to that kind of nails it down. It's been attributed to Confucius, to the Talmud, to Anais Nin. Stephen Covey recently was attributed just today on a Google search. They're like, who came up with that thought? But it doesn't really matter because the thought kind of lives on in us. And that idea that, well, we're back to Piaget, the psychology of what we see changes what we know changes what we see. So how do we look at something really clearly? Is objectivity even possible? And in some cases, it's not desirable. Certainly in poetry, we want a little subjectivity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my images are about looking at looking. I will sometimes say they're about the nature of perception and the perception of nature. And that might just sound like fancy art speak, but no. Honestly, I don't think that we can really see nature clearly until we see ourselves seeing. How much anthropomorphism are we getting into? How much projection? When we lack the word for we that includes nature in the English language and many other languages, what does that do to our relationship to nature? Do we just see it as a commodity? Do we then turn around and see ourselves as commodities, objects? So language is very much caught up in perception, just as looking at images, and I think we need to be able to see both. Every image has a title. So, reflection. That's what this is all about.
Yeah. Here we have this amazing image that, you see the sky, but you're deep into the ocean as well. So you've got those, air and water included in the beautiful light, but also the different colors in the different areas where you're with the brighter pinks and reds, and then you go into the ocean and now it's green and blue. Relate that to the specific image that we're looking at.
I'm smiling because you're caught up in the experience. That's great. Yeah.
I love it. It's fantastic.
How many times should we do that with images we love and just like, hey, let's talk this image. Like, what's happening? So glad to hear in your own words, you're seeing exactly many of the themes I do. So many of my images are offering opportunities. It first starts with me, but they're offering opportunities to see something in more than one way at once. So you're right. We're looking down to look up at the sky. We're looking at the surface of the water, and we're looking through. We're looking in and at. We're looking near and far. It's just you can keep going. So how many ways can we look all at the same time? And of course, I'm talking about self-reflection, which is not here in the image, unless you consider yourself to be part of nature, all nature. But I'm also looking at reflection and as a physical thing. And one of the challenges I'm challenged by with photography is a lot of times what we're doing, we're just making records of light reflecting off the surface of things. And that could be very superficial, and sometimes that could be really deep. And so how do we know when we've really penetrated the surface and had an experience like that? Now, this image is a composite because I spent so many mornings for years, chasing that really still water that could perfectly reflect the sky and the kind of mandala Rorschach pattern you get immersed in when that happens. And it's almost there, but the earth is always breathing. So to find the really still moment, I shot the sky and layered it over the water to create the experience I was looking for. And then when I print it and hang it on the wall, I come back to this touchstone. I do think of this one kind of like a mandala, or at least an object of contemplation. And I watch my moods change, my impressions change, my thoughts change over time. The Buddhists use the sky as a metaphor for mind, and they're often talking about clearing the sky of all those passing thoughts.
I was not familiar with that.
And that's not why I made this image. I made it intuitively, But then when I heard it, I said, yeah, I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You sent a second reflection image. Now this structurally is sort of the same. I think
Exactly.
I'm not, or maybe not. You tell me. So I think that we're sort of looking at is it sky and water here too that we're interacting with in this image?
Yeah. Yeah. And there are no clouds. I was asking, okay, after that first image, like, could I get more still? Could the
Yeah.
experience become more still? And it kind of took me years to kind of get to this. I kept photographing skies with fewer and fewer clouds, and found this image finally where it found me. But yes, it's the same structure as the other one, the same container, but it presents another kind of experience that's related, and yet there's a kind of an intensity of color, a kind of a clarity.
Kind of an
I think that
intensity of
this
color.
image
It's
is
the intensity of color is amazing in this image. So it's brilliant.
I kind of think that this is incredibly still and incredibly loud. I mean,
Yeah.
the light in the atmosphere is like. I've been playing in this series a lot with. So many of my images are obsessed with the horizon, and what I do is I place the horizon right at the top of the frame. So you don't see the horizon, but the top of the frame is the horizon. It's just another one of my obsessions.
Could I ask just a basic like elementary photography question?
Can I
How
stop?
and where was this captured? Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out as a photographer walking around the world,
Yep.
where was this scene so that you knew how to or were able to do this?
Well, before I answer that, I'd just like to ask the question, is it that anymore? Or is it a more universal experience? Is it a more internal experience?
Yeah.
And I would say yes. It's a
Okay.
both and. And so as a physical location, it's in one of those geothermal hot pots in Yellowstone looking into the water there. And then it's also looking out to the far horizon late in the day
Yeah.
when you've got that glorious color,
You must have
the sun.
been just when you're looking through on at the screen or whatever you're looking at when you saw this, just thought, oh, this is something.
Exactly. And now the question is, not stopping there, how many things is it? Like,
Yeah.
okay, this is something. What kind of something? I'm also
Yeah.
thinking a lot about Rothko. And initially
Mm.
I was kind of off put by a lot of modernism, but as I was going to school, walking by the gallery, getting to painting class, I kept stopping at the Rothkos and said, I'm having a physical reaction to color. What's going on? It's just three rectangles here. Like, what's happening? But I was having an emotional experience with color as well as a physical sensation. So that's carried through here as well.
Love it. All right, let's move on to number 2, your alignment series, and we start off with this image in the desert, I assume, and it's as symmetrical as could be.
Yeah, symmetry. People either love it or hate it. It's
Yes.
interesting. And thou shalt not use the center of the frame, the most powerful part of the frame. But yes, we know it balances things. If imbalance and dynamism is your kick, then don't use the center of the frame. If stillness and centeredness is your thing, well, you might want to consider it. I mean, so many traditions do.
I don't know
Anyway,
how you can argue
um,
against it in this case. It's beautiful.
thank you. Again, this was working out a creative problem and challenge. I'd gone to the racetrack in Death Valley, and I wanted to see the mysterious paths that the rocks made as they slipped across the playa. And there have been a lot of theories about that, whether it's wind and ice or something geomagnetic or the wilder one, aliens. Like, yeah, okay. And when I
Could
got
be.
there, it had been raining, and you're not supposed to walk out on the playa, or you'll leave a lot of footprints, and those footprints will be around for a really long time. Like
Yes. Yes.
if all the tourists walked out in this place, and when it was wet, you wouldn't be able to see the stone paths anymore. So I had to work from the periphery, and I couldn't get the lines that I wanted to make, but I could get shots of the playa. And so I made my own paths by cloning the cracks out of the playa to make my own way through that.
Yeah.
And it was also really interesting for me to experience, so many times I'm thinking about adding something to an image in a composite to create the composition. And here I'm taking something out to create something. It reminds me of that whole kind of Zen idea that a bowl is useful because it has space.
Well, I'm sorry. Now I have to think about that. So, a bowl is useful because it has space.
Yeah. I mean, if you
You're
fill it
making
up,
me.
I'm constantly getting after my wife who loves to take my collection of singing bowls, and she'll put little things in them because they're beautiful little places to store something.
Yeah.
But once there's something in it, it doesn't sing anymore. It's like, hey, I need the space, right?
Okay.
So there's this
So
beautiful
that,
balance between form and this and the space that the form contains, and that can be applied to negative space in the images as well. The right amount of negative space can help an image breathe and feel more complete. There's a funny story behind this one. Sometimes you pick up these experiences you have with your own pictures with other people. Epson has these conference rooms in their office in LA. And being one of the Epson Stylus pros, Jay Maisel was there at the same time that I was delivering a lecture for the Epson folks. And we got a tour of these new conference rooms, and there was the Jay Maisel room, and there was the John Paul room. We're in Jay's, and I'm patting him on the back and saying, "Great job, Maestro, this is brilliant." And we get into my room, and he starts doing this. I'm like, "Jay, what are you doing? I got one more than you." Awesome, Jay. I know you're prolific. I got that. And he's always smoking a stogie, so he's taking his stogie out and he starts poking at my picture. Are you? And I'm not going to repeat the word. It's very New York. Are you with me? Said, well, I wouldn't put it that way, but yeah, you're right. Like you got it. I cloned the cracks out to make the path. See, no, I go in just like that. Only mine's more pure. I drove my car out on the mud flats. Jay, you're not supposed to do that.
don't do that.
Mine's more environmentally friendly. There's this sacred impulse to design the earth, and it relates to the next image and to this image. I'm definitely thinking Nazca lines here. I'm thinking petroglyphs. That leads into the next one. It's actually a bubble chamber diagram, particle physics. So I've started creating my own petroglyphs, and it's really important for me to clearly disclose whenever images like these are shared that this is done virtually and that Photoshop allows me to participate with land in a way that I would like to virtually, not physically. I'm not encouraging people to make their own petroglyphs out there, because if everybody made petroglyphs, the whole world would be covered with graffiti.
Yep.
And I kind of lament the fact that today, with so many people, this exploding population, the pressure that puts on the earth, there are certain kinds of ways of participating with nature that are cut off from us, that it's no longer responsible to, even if you thought it was a sacred act. And it's also, I think I mentioned in my last talk with you, how Andy Goldsworthy, the sculptor, photographer,
Yes.
his environmental art is ephemeral. It's built to disappear, to let the rain wash it away or it will melt. So he makes it, he photographs it, it lasts a short time, and then the blank canvas of nature is returned to all of us so that we can find our own experience there.
Number 3, we are looking at exhalation. Tell
So
us
I
about this.
often ask my students, if you could only keep one image, if you had to destroy all of your images, and you could keep one image, which one would it be? It's a very interesting question, and it might change over time, but it really gets down to, what are you in it for? What does photography mean to you? What are the things that are most important to you? If you have to let it all go, what do you come back to? And that's actually, when I first encouraged you to do this, I was just following my 5, but you
Yep.
said, hey, 3. I think that's even better,
Yeah.
and so I kind of want to level it up here at 1, like this one for me. This
Really?
was
Okay.
this, this was a massive breakthrough for me,
Hmm.
and I almost missed it. What I mean is, I was working with transparencies on a light table, and I moved a small mirror across the light table, and I caught this image out of the corner of my eye, came back to it, said, "Oh, wait a minute, that's way better than what I'm working on. Stop the presses, do this. You don't know what the heck you're doing, but you got to find out. Like, chase it." And I did, and it opened up a whole new series of work that is with me today. And so this Rorschach pattern is really a lot of fun. It elicits all the associative qualities that we human beings naturally have. Call it pareidolia if you want. We'll make patterns, quote, even if they're not there, or maybe they're there because we're there. That's another way of looking at it. Let me just tell you some of the fun that I've had with this. I don't tell people what I see in these patterns until I'm sure that they'll hang on to their initial impressions. Because for me, again, it's a both and. It's both what you see and it's what I see and it's what's out there. Because it's in
Yeah.
here and it's out there at the same time, right? So the most challenging for me, and I just had to bite my tongue, there was this inebriated gentleman who came up to me reeking of cigars and scotch. How do I know? Well, you know how I know.
Yeah.
And he leads me over to this. He says, "I love your satanic icon." Okay. Now I'm thinking in the back of my brain, I've titled the series kind of a working title, Heaven's Breath, but I ultimately came across with the title Avra, the Sanskrit word for breath, before I finally settled on, titles are so hard, Exhalation as the series, because I like to use a title that suggests a process, not a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, so most of the impressions that I've collected are around some beatific presence and some sense of breath. And here, it's a satanic icon for him.
The opposite.
Another really funny one, a friend of mine, a student and a dear friend, Charlie Foxwell, bought this print, brought it back to his wife in Chicago. "Look, isn't it beautiful? Where should we hang it?" "You're not hanging that in here." "What do you mean?" "It's dirty." "What are you talking about? Can't you see? It's an X-ray of somebody sitting on the toilet." I tell my folks.
That's what I saw
just keep
too, I have to say.
Did you really?
I did.
You may want to seek professional help.
Tell me who she went to and I'll go to the same person.
But here's my absolute favorite. It was the first time that I exhibited this in my studio. Usually every summer we'll do an open studio and I'll hang only new work. And this was the first time. And I was lucky enough to be in the corner of the gallery when this little 4-year-old ran across the threshold and just went, "Ah!" Stopped. And I thought, wait a minute. If you can catch the breath of a 4-year-old, stop that perpetual motion machine. Success. I pay a lot of attention to breath. My own breath when I'm photographing or when I'm looking at pictures. And also, whenever I'm in an exhibit, just watch how breathing changes as they move through the exhibit. In this case, it was a full stop. Before, he starts sputtering and there's spit going everywhere. Never was I so glad for glass in front of the pictures. It's a giant sneeze. We still call it giant sneeze in the studio. It's just the code name because I just love that so much. And also, I just one of the greatest compliments of my life. Just like stop, breath. Wonderful, wonderful.
Well, a great way to wrap up that discussion, John Paul Caponigro. So I'm going to throw a curveball at you. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but I have another question for you. Is there another photographer that you would like to have see this conversation of their work?
You mean, would I recommend who else to talk with?
Yes.
I encourage you to talk to Sean Kernan. He's one of the most articulate photographers I know. He always surprises me. And it's kind of why I go to it. He's also going to intersect a little bit on that Buddhist, like, breathe and find out what happens. And that's part of why he's so darn surprising. And so many resources. He also is a writer. He's also an actor. And in fact, he's helping me recite my poetry for the record that goes with the book that's coming out at the end of the year. Because despite being trained as a voice actor who can sell a car to a politician, I need his Alan Arkin training to help me deliver that a little more authentically.
And is there an image? Is there an image of his that you're thinking about when you talk about his work?
Well, see, I'm not sure I'm doing Sean full justice. There's so many images to choose from. His split portraits are fascinating. His mud people are fascinating. But there's an image I'm about to put on the wall in my studio of a wall in his family home where you're just seeing the outline of a missing picture. It's the shadow, things have faded over time. And it's this kind of beautiful wall, and it's this non-presence. It's the presence of some non-presence. It's very. I don't think he would even want to call it Zen, but in terms of the emptiness of the bowl, in terms of the ephemerality of life, initially, it doesn't seem like much, and the longer you live with it, the more it just slays you.
Love it. Love it. Well, John Paul Caponigro, photographer, artist, poet, son of the great Paul Caponigro. It is a pleasure to have you on the Crit House once again. I thank you not only for coming on, but for the concept and the idea of this series 3. Thank you for all that.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you for running with it. Thank you for this.
And thank you all for watching the Crit House.